Hi everyone, I'm Nishtha.
Hi everyone, this is Sukanya.
And we welcome you to our podcast, Intersectional Feminism Desi Style, brought to you by Feminism in India.
When we think of popular culture, this podcast has been about popular culture, looking at popular culture with an intersectional feminist lens. And when we think of popular culture and cinema, especially commercial cinema with mainstream stars, so to say, we can see that the women in these films are almost always portrayed in certain pre-constructed ways. They look a certain way, they belong to a certain age bracket or social location. And very rarely do we see women, both in terms of actors as well as characters, who are removed from these molds. And it's quite rare to see women who are not selfless mothers or eternal lovers or timeless beauties. We don't see many women making mistakes or being volatile. And it's often very hard for us to relate to these women and these molds because, well, we're all human and we all have so many different emotions, and women are not immune to that. And when we do see these nuanced characters, women being who they are, in all their beauty and chaos and confusions and everything within this very masculine system, it is most often because there's a woman who's telling these stories. So when we look at it cumulatively, we see how important it is for more women to tell stories and to take control of these narratives. Today, we have with us somebody who does this, takes control, tells us stories, and has shown us many, many women on screen who are nuanced, vulnerable, and very, very relatable.
Normally, when we talk about who our guests are on the show, we have a list. They've won this award and they've done this. But today we didn't want to do that because we'll talk about her body of work and you'll immediately know who we are talking about. She has directed some of the most cathartic films for women, such as Lipstick Under My Burqa, the recent show Bombay Begums, Turning 30, Dolly Kitty or Wo Chamakte Sitare. I'm sure you know who we're talking about today. We're so excited to have with us on this episode Alankrita Srivastava. Thank you so much for taking out the time to speak with us today, Alankrita.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you guys and really excited about the conversation that we're going to have.
Thank you, Alankrita. So let's just dive into the conversation. I wanted to ask you at the onset that it's very recent that the conversation on the importance of women telling their own stories and this whole aspect of non-appropriation and what the experience of a woman telling her own stories could add to the narrative is coming to the fore. And even being a woman is not a monolithic experience. I just want to tell you that while watching Bombay Begums and while watching Pooja Bhatt in Bombay Begums, I think the most important detail that I took away from that, from the character of Pooja, is that she keeps getting hot flushes, and she's a woman in her 40s, and she's probably experiencing a menopausal phase, and I felt that, oh, this detail is here because there's a woman who's telling a story, because this is so experiential, and this observation comes from the sort of empathy that empathy that comes out of lived experience. Like when you see a woman who's going through that, you just know how difficult it is and how it's everywhere. Like she's sweating and she's not the sort of wax beauty that you want a woman to be. So I was watching that and I was thinking, well, this is because a woman's telling the story. So how do you navigate trying to tell a story that is probably of an identity that you don't necessarily associate with? I mean, even being a woman, you have written and told stories about women characters who belong to all sorts of age brackets, all sorts of social occasions, and you have meticulously added these details that make these characters so much relatable and layered. So as a writer, I just wanted to understand, in your process of conceiving and constructing these characters, what is it that you do? How is your experience of building these characters who sometimes also are not necessarily experiencing the things that you experience, while staying true to that, their respective experiences?
I think, I guess there are a few things for me. One is that I feel whatever material, I work on, whatever stories I'm writing, directing, I do feel like for me, characters drive the narrative. And I think that is very important, because then the characters are not serving the purpose of the plot, but the plot is emerging from the character. And I think I prefer to look at stories like that, looking at it from the perspective of the character. And I think like a more inside approach, because I think that sometimes when you're looking at a character from the outside, it's not the same as when you are looking at the character from the inside. So I think for me, a lot emerges by just trying to be inside the life in the head of that character, and trying to inhabit what that character must be going through. So, I just, like you had used the word add details, and I felt like, that's the thing. I don't feel like I have to add details. These are all the things that kind of emerge from thinking about what's going on in that character's life, whether it's some issues like which I do feel for women especially. I think there's always a conversation that we are having with our bodies, whether it is about a biological clock ticking away, whether it is about how we feel, how we are looked at, how we are looking at ourselves, whether we're going through puberty or menopause, or whether it's about sexual desire. So I think that forms, a large, that kind of affects the internal and external landscape, emotional and physical landscape of a woman's life. So I think my idea when I'm looking at a character is to not ignore that. It's not like I'm just showing her as a particular thing, so I'm not going to look at that. I just feel all these things kind of intersect. So, if it's, for instance, like you said about Pooja Bhatt's character, Rani's character in Bombay Begums. So even though she's, she is this, the CEO of this bank, she's also a person who's going through, like, all these things. So I think for me, that's what it is, that you could be somebody, when like a particular, like you could be defined as only a from the outside, but the moment you look inwards, there are so many other things going on in a person's life. And I think for me, things move because of what's going on inside that character's life. I feel certain decisions they take, certain reactions that they have, what all emerges in their life. So often I haven't thought through exactly what will happen, but when I start working on it and thinking about the character, those situations kind of emerge, and okay, like this will happen or whatever, because this is where the character's life is. And also, and the second aspect, of course, I feel is the world of the character, like, because I feel characters function in a context. For instance, Bhumi's character of Kitty in Dolly Kitty or Wo Chamakte Sitare, she made certain decisions about what she did because she was in those circumstances. She didn't have the luxury of various choices. So she was making decisions within a context. So I think for me, that is also important, the socio-economic context of a character, the world that character is living in and inhabiting, because I don't think choices also made in air, like, without context. So I think like those two things for me together are very important, like going into the character and then also rooting the character in that particular, the specificity of that socio-economic context.
So, that actually gives me a good segue for what we wanted to ask you next. Is you said that a character made certain choices in a context, and and there are multiple layers to that context. And also, we were reading in a recent interview, you said that you don't judge your characters for the choices that they make, which is in itself such a liberating statement, because I feel like we live in a world where it doesn't matter what choice you make, like across the board. If you're a fierce feminist, you're going to be judged for that also. If it's not possible for you to immediately break all shackles that you're supposed, or if you can't break out of the mold that's been set by you, then you're judged for that also. Like there's judgment galore. If there's anything that you'll find an ample in the world about, like, for a woman, it's judgment on her choices. So we wanted to ask you, like, when you sit down to write a character and you go through the process of writing that character, how, when you write something, or when you make a certain choice for a character, or the character makes it for themselves in that context, do you sometimes, like, when you move away, are like, was that, I don't know how I feel about that now, like, how do you actually evolve? Like, does your perception of the world also evolve as you flesh out a character in a certain space? What is your relationship with the character, not just from the page, but also how they translate then finally on screen? Because I'm sure there's changes to that as well, like when you add a person, like add a face to that, the clothes to that. Can you describe that journey for us a little bit?
So I feel as a filmmaker and as a writer, you will always, look back on stuff that you've done and be like, it's more like, could it have been done differently? etc. I try to not get into that too much because it's a very debilitating and a very, it stops you from moving forward or doing anything else. And there's no, and the thing is, once it's left, once you put something out in the world, it's done. So I think I've quite trained myself to not get into that, because you just it doesn't serve any purpose. And I feel whatever you need to learn through the journey, you are going to learn in any case. So I think I don't normally tend to look back and say that, would she have done this? I mean, I have a fair and objective idea about things that I could have done differently in terms of the craft of the film. Sometimes I feel like, the edit could have been better, the music could have been better, these scenes could have been edited better, the scene could have been written better. But I think those are more like in terms of the technical aspect of, or even at a script level, like sometimes you feel like, okay, this could have been, done differently, this scene could have worked out better. But I think not at the core level in terms of who are these characters and what do they want and what choices have they made. I don't think I've ever looked back and said that maybe she wouldn't have done this or she shouldn't have uh, uh, you know done this, because I don't know, I guess I just haven't, maybe I'm not, I've not walked down that path. But I do feel that it is very, very important to not judge your characters, because then you can't have empathy and then you're writing at them rather than, writing like through them. And the other thing is that, of course, there are a lot of issues, a lot of things that one grapples with when one is writing something or making something where you yourself are not very clear on your own stance. And I think for me, definitely, I'll again come back to the same example. I think for me, like Kitty's choices in Dolly Kitty was something that I had grappled with right from the time when I had first thought of the film. And initially, I didn't want to write the film because I was like, I was always thinking about her choices. And then I said, that's the whole point of it. Like, I what would I do in those circumstances? And I think that makes you look at things very, very differently. And I think that was a very clear sort of, um, uh, it was a conversation I had with myself, that I was scared of getting into that story because I felt like I don't know, what is the exact answer. And then I was like, that's the beauty of it. You don't have to have the exact answer. You have to, people make choices at that moment, depending on what they want and what their circumstances are. And that's the choice that you make. And I think for me, then it was like, uh, I think it was really like diving into the unknown in that sense. When I wrote that film, because I really did want it to not have judgment and yet have that thing of her like questioning herself and being in this kind of atmosphere and all of that. So I think like those kind of things definitely do come up, even in, I mean, I guess less so in Bombay Becomes, but even then, like, for instance, some like Shahana's character, her name was Fatima in the show. But like her kind of stance about first defending the person, then, and I realized that these are all this is what happens in real life. It's not so clear cut. We can't make immediate decisions. We don't know like what we have to do. And I think that characters shouldn't, I mean, I don't like characters who are very heroic and always know exactly what they have to do. Like even Konkana's character in Dolly Kitty, she right at the beginning of the film, I mean, actually the crux, she knows that her husband is, making a pass at her cousin, at her sister. It takes her 2 hours to come to the point where she leaves him.
Yeah.
The whole film, which is like a span of like a couple of months for her to understand what's really going on and dig into it and all of that. So I think and I would never judge her for not immediately reacting or immediately confronting her husband, because that's not how real life plays out. You're just like, you're trying to navigate so many different things, and you're never able to, and we also, I think, occupy so many, like, multiple identities at one go. And I think, like, all of that comes into conflict, with each other as well. So I think, from that perspective, yeah, I definitely am of the opinion that if you judge characters, you can't judge even people who do something which is supposedly very vile. Like, you have to critique it, but you have to still see it from that person's point of view, because otherwise I feel like that authenticity in that character, won't come through. Yeah.
So I have a follow-up question on the process of writing, again based on your film Dolly Kitty, because that was one film that I remember I watched it and I was like, okay, like I've never seen anything like this before. So because we work for a feminist organization, it's a media organization, we talk about a lot of issues that we don't really see translated as part of a story, vaginismus being one of them, which was a running theme in Dolly Kitty also, right? And it was just something that I knew about it before because I had done a very informational piece that this is what it is, but had never actually seen the human impact of that, or how it, because it was secondary vaginismus where she'd been able to have sex at one point in time and then wasn't able to do so anymore. So again, the word wasn't said, or now I'm forgetting, my memory fails me if it was said, but it was very clearly that concept. So again, I wanted to know, when you sit down to write, would something like, would it be in the back of your mind where you'd be like, let's add this because this is something that's not spoken about? Or is it again just the character's circumstance adding to the, like, adding to what they're actually feeling and like the reason that they're being this way? Is it so we talk about, is it an addition, like you'd mentioned that it's not an addition but it's inherent in their fabric? So something like that, where would that fit in?
But again, I think, like, I'm trying to think back to when I first started thinking about Dolly's character. I think it emerged in her character only, that she is having this issue. She is just physically, she's just like, she's shut down. And yeah, I think it comes from just exploring the character, just getting into her mind space. What is her life like? And I feel like all these, like, what are the truths about her life emerge. I actually, to be honest, have never sat down with the thing that, okay, this, I want to put this, I want to put that. I think it just comes the moment I'm looking at that cat. I don't know what will come, but the moment I start thinking, then, I just, I feel, and I guess the things are that so many of these things are so commonplace that the moment you think more deeply about a character, these things come up. I remember even in Lipstick, the fact that she gets raped by her husband, it was never something I thought of initially. But as I was working on the script, I remember when I reached that point, I was like, he's not going to argue with her. Anyway, he's working himself towards that, like, he pretty much, and that's actually the reality of it. So I think for me, a lot of things just come from just trying to, like, just sit down with that character and just try to see that what must be going on in her life. What is her day-to-day life like? How is she feeling? And being honest about asking these questions, that what is this, the status of her marriage, her relationship, um, and I think her body, because I do feel that there is this whole thing about, women not being empowered with the thought that they own their bodies, but their bodies are always of service to somebody else, and not in a sense of that, oh, she's a prostitute and her body's of service, but really like the idea that you don't have control over, so many women don't have control over when they want to have children, what they want to do, or how their days spend, how much time time they spend slaving in the kitchen. So many things I feel like, and when they want to have sex, when they don't want to have sex. So it's basically, and what they should wear, not wear. So I do feel like, at a very base level, do the idea that women need to regain control over their own bodies, I think, is, for me, a very important aspect of anything that's going on, in a woman's life.
Alankrita, talking about women and how their bodies and their time is always perceived to be of service to somebody else, Now, your first directorial feature was Turning 30 with Gul Panag in the lead. And the film also had a lot of references about how women deal with aging and why there's so much more pressure on women to, sort of quickly decide, because we feel that 30 is the mark where you have to have decided on a career, you have to have decided on a partner, you should have probably ideally had at least one child, and you should be planning for your second child because there's this whole biological clock ticking. So there is this perception that, and also this kind of visibility issue where you see women and you don't know what they do after they're 30, or like on screen also. What is it that they go through? Do they have a midlife crisis? What if they have not figured a partner? What if they're changing a career? And I think even Julie Delphi was quoted saying this recently when On the Verge was out. She was talking about how, once you are over your whatever fertility period where you are no longer considered fertile to reproduce, or you've gone to a place where in your life, in an age where you're supposed to serve your kids, or your life has to be around, sort of preparing them or preparing the family and just being there, you sort of, a woman sort of steps back into invisibility, and you really don't know what's happening in these women's lives. On screen also, I don't think that's something that we see a lot. But now, a decade and I think three more films and a series and a lot more work older, how do you think that the lives of middle-aged women, older women, have changed in terms of autonomy and life choices and how they are portrayed on screen? Do you think that life beyond 30 for a woman has more cinematic visibility now?
I think definitely that women over 30 have more cinematic visibility now, and I think a lot of regressive ideas that were there in in mainstream Hindi cinema, I think have been challenged in terms of, like, I remember back in the 80s, it was like once an actor who's a female, a female actor, once she got married, she wouldn't like act. It was very rare. There was like one Sharmila Tagore, one Dimple Kapadia, but overall the idea was that once you get married, you somehow stop acting. Uh, and then later it was that, okay, well, after a kid and all of that. So I think a lot of those things have changed. And I think, like, um, one has to hand it also to, I think the last few years, I think female actors have come, and I'm talking like big female stars have come much more into their own in being able to continue to, work. And I think filmmakers are continuing to cast them and all of that. So I think definitely there is a shift. And I think, like, it all, of course, reflects also what's happening in society. I think the idea of, where earlier 35 was just considered like old and all of that. I think that idea is definitely changing, but still, I think that pressure of choice that, of having sorted things out, uh, that idea that you should have found your partner and you should be set on your path by the time you're 30. I think that those kind of ideas still sort of persist. I definitely think things are better, but they're not that great. I mean, it's a little bit better, but it's not like, I think portrayal on screen has uh, changed so drastically. I think, like, the fact that there is a Vidya Balan, there is a Tabu, I think those, and they're doing amazing work. I think that's phenomenal. And I think now, on in the streaming space, now there are so many actors, who are uh, doing, like, they're doing lead parts. I think that's great. But I still think that whole idea of portraying that, that youthful waif-like girl with her perfect beauty is still very, very, entrenched in popular culture. And I think that, and of course, like, I think it's important to challenge that happily ever after, because, earlier it was like the moment whatever issue was there between her and the guy, it got resolved. It's like happily ever after, but that's just the beginning.
Yeah, just to follow up, Alankrita. So a lot of times, women, especially women who speak about things that trouble them, feminist filmmakers or, even feminist film critics often get asked this question. And we've asked this to most of our guests also. They keep getting asked, why are you not happy with anything? Why are you always like complaining? So when you come up with your films and when you make stories, and have you ever been asked this, like, Alankrita, why can't you make happy films? Or why are you making films where women are always unhappy? Like, there's a question, like, we are expected to be happy all the time and nothing facilitates this happiness, so to say, and then we're again asked to put up with it. So have you encountered these questions?
I think it's a lot, of course. Like I keep getting asked, and I keep getting like, like why don't I make those very simple romantic films and all that? Of course, but I think now more and more people have kind of little bit stopped. They still say it, but it's not like how it was earlier, that they would ask me more. I think now people have a little bit started giving up on me. But I do get a lot of flack for the morality of women, and I find that, like, I find it so it really riles me up, to be honest, because people are so quick to pass judgment on women. Why do they want women to be morally righteous? I think this is something that it vexed. Like I'm always vexed by this question, because I feel like people react so harshly to the idea of a morally ambiguous woman, like whose morality is gray. But they have never reacted like that to male characters. So I think like that's the one thing that I feel like I keep getting a lot of backlash for it. I find it I just feel like I don't know how people are, how are they thinking that they can keep asking those same questions and keep getting upset with me for portraying women who are not good or like morally, like, and I don't even know what is morality. I mean, so I just feel like there's I think that backlash is very, very, very strong. Like, why did she cheat on her husband? Why did she, did this one drink? Why did this one smoke? Why, but I feel like nobody ever questions any male characters for any of these things. And it's not like the way a woman is portrayed means every woman has to be that, but there should be space for women to make all kinds of choices, whether they are good or bad or right or wrong, and let them figure it out themselves, what those choices are. And also, like, I think looking, not liking the idea of ambition in women, that even if you're portraying ambitious women, they should be amazingly good and always doing the right thing, always very conscientious. But life is not like that. So I think for me, that is the thing. And the other question, of course, that why aren't you giving your male characters more importance, more prominence, more space? uh, that question is also something that keeps coming up. But anyway, I've learned to live with all this.
So because we talked about women coming to having a journey, and also you mentioned very correctly that happily ever after happens and people think that's where the story ends, but that's actually where the story starts. So I have a anecdote / confession that I have to share with you. So when Lipstick Under My Burqa first came out, I was still in college, like I was studying, and I had like doe-eyed optimism about the entire world, where I was like, every film has to just end with all of the threads tying themselves up. And I remember I watched the film, and the first time I saw it, I was like, what happened? Nothing happened. They all just come out and they start smoking. Their lives have gone to shit and they haven't done anything about it. And then I saw it again like a few months ago, and I was like, oh my God, Nishtha, what do you think will happen? Nothing can happen overnight. They can't suddenly fix their lives in this little space. This is the most real thing to happen, where, yes, everything is like scattered all around them, but at least they're finding solidarity and comfort in female friendships, which is how life is. And I was like, wow, like that's growth right there for you, my friend. Well, because I remember, and the second time I saw it, it was like I saw it with an entirely new lens, where I was like, oh, my criticism was very childish, for the lack of a better word. So I was like, it was on my agenda. I was like, I have to tell her that this happened.
But it was a journey for me also, because I had shot the whole end of the film. I had written it, shot it, yeah, but of what happens and all of that. But then I just decided to, not use it. So me and my editor were like, because the film actually ended there. It didn't matter what they did the next day and all of that. And, and then we were like, no, the film ends there. And that's really...
Coming to, again, the question of criticism that you have had to face. Now, criticism is one thing, censorship is another. And there has been so much, I'm sorry for using this word, but very arbitrary censorship that your work has undergone. I mean, it's not like 17-year-olds in urban societies aren't having sex. Let's just say that, and let's just put it out there. And it's better to talk about it and talk about how to safely engage in that practice, as opposed to being like, nahi nahi nahi, ye nahi ho raha, shut it down, shut it down. Like, but that is unfortunately the kind of reaction that your work has elicited, like whether it was Lipstick Under My Burqa or Bombay Begums, and just in general, like a lot of furore over things that really need to be talked about. So, and although we all know the answer to this, I still want you to articulate it. Where do you think this sort of fear, aggression, anger is stemming from? And B, how do you deal with it? Simple. Like, what did you do when there was all of that conversation around your work?
To be honest, things have, I think, changed a lot between between the time in Lipstick Under My Burqa. It was not given certification by the censor board and was banned. I think there was a way of and I think that was coming from a very deeply patriarchal kind of mindset, because I think people were not able to I think they were not used to seeing the lived reality of working class women. I think it just threw everybody off that women, can be beings of their own. And I think it also had to do with the class of the women that was being portrayed. They were very everyday, ordinary women who were fighting for like freedom. So I think that's the reason they decided to like ban it and not give it certification. And with Bombay Begums, I think, it was a totally different sort of story. And also I think the streaming space things are different, because like there's a different process and all of that. But I think I became a bit hardened, I must say, during the process of fighting to get Lipstick Under My Burqa released, because it was a long kind of a thing, and I hadn't expected ever that they're going to just be like they're just going to want to ban the film altogether and all of that. So I think I kind of also realized, I think the reality hit me of, the society that we live in. And to be honest, even during turning 30, I remember they had, I didn't get, like the censor board refused to pass my promos because, Gul had some dialogue where she was saying that just because I've slept with you doesn't mean I want to marry you. And then there was some hen party scene, and they were like, this is so obscene and all. So they had passed the film with an adult certificate, which now I think it was such a vanilla film. I don't know why it had an adult certificate. But the promos, they didn't pass. It was a struggle to get my promos out. And I remember I had such a, and I think like the censorship mindset is very deep. It's about, of course, the authorities who try to stop you, but also the systems where that you don't get that space. So I remember turning 30 also, we had no distribution with Lipstick. I never got distribution because it was so hard. Finally, Balaji came on board, but it was like before that I was just running like from pillar to post. Nobody wanted to release the film because they just felt like and the same thing had happened to me during turning 30, because people were like, what is this film, whatever. So I feel like I've become a bit hardened, because I feel like, there is a reality of a patriarchal society that we live in, and it permeates everything. And I think things are getting worse in many ways than better, in terms of that patriarchy getting more and more entrenched, I feel, because I feel so many factors are now overlapping that kind of patriarchal sort of mindset in India. So while I feel like streaming has been very liberating, because it's beautiful that you don't have to sit outside the censor board office and just wait like you've committed some crime and you have to wait for them. But of course, like this is, I feel like the kind of world we live in, the tentacles of patriarchy will emerge in some way or the other and try to shut you down. And I think like realizing that is quite liberating in a certain sense, because then you're not confused. It's coming from various places, but it's essentially it's the same thing. Sometimes it can come from a weird troll. Sometimes it comes from some sometimes from a film critic who can really write. Like I remember during turning 30, there was some seriously misogynist kind of, reviews. Like one said, oh, why should a girl spoon a boy and sleep? Like, there was some shot and his bull is hugging Purab and sleeping, and they had one critic had written a whole para about why a woman shouldn't, it should be the reverse and things like that, and why should she, string these two men along. I'm fine with you criticize the film, like you feel the film doesn't work for various reasons, but to criticize the morality of the character because you think she's not good is something else. So I feel like, that's like, I feel like these things, they come from all sides. When somebody doesn't want to sanction a budget for something that is led by women. So basically now I've realized that they're all different forms of patriarchy in the moment, and you don't have to do anything. You just have to try to tell your story, and just by being honest, you're challenging the status quo. There is nothing that you have to do actually. It's like everyone's like, oh, you really, like when people ask me, you're really doing things to challenge the system, I said, I'm not doing anything. I'm just telling whatever story I'm interested in. I try to tell that story. It's just that the moment you're honest about the lived reality of women's lives, it becomes a very bitter pill for somebody or the other to swallow, because they just don't want to see it in, so they don't want to see working class women like that. Then they don't want to see upper middle class women like they'll always have some problem.
But yeah, talking about understanding systemic patriarchy and understanding the nuances of the aggression that patriarchy inflicts on women and other marginalized genders. You just spoke about how it, women just telling about their lives in all honesty, putting their truth out there in itself is so powerful and so political. And we didn't have this vocabulary around, say, aspects like consent or emotional violence or, manipulation or gaslighting in relationships. And also, systemically, we did not have this probably until the Me Too movement, where we started suddenly having so many survivors talking about things, however nuanced it is. We've started understanding aggression more, and we've also started developing a sense of solidarity, vocabulary. We are trying to hold space. So we live in the post-Me Too world where even the film industry has majorly come under the scanner, not just here, but worldwide. So being a woman in a decisive position of power in your career at this point, like you said, where you also see a lot more women producing, telling stories, writing, directing. In what ways do you think that the inclusion of more women in decision-making positions can create, more sensitivity to abuse? And how important do you think it is for cinema as a workspace, as a space of employment, to be held accountable for gender-based violence, considering that, putting the Me Too movement in context?
I think, to be very honest, I think the Me Too movement has been a complete failure in India. I do feel. But I think a few good things that have come out of it is, at least I think there's more conversation around it, and a few systems have come into place. So I do think that, just the basic idea of having more women on a set, it makes women, it's a very different atmosphere from having a place where there are very few women on set. I think it's just the nature of interaction changes if there are more women in an environment. There are more women you can speak to. There are more women who will look out for you. It's also very intangible. It's just like and I remember when I had started working, the first film I worked on was Ganga Jal, where I joined as a trainee assistant, and there were only 3 women on the crew. There was me, there was a hairdresser, and there was a costume assistant. And there were 250 odd men. I mean, it was an amazing set and everything. And to be they were everything was fabulous. I'm just talking about the numbers.
Right.
So I just feel that, and now it's like you see so many more women on a set, which is so lovely. And, that's really how it should be. And I think the number can still go up way more. But I think that atmosphere is very important. Also, knowing that there are women who you can talk to, will understand what has happened. And I think when you have more women who are in deciding positions, it's, they have more power. So I think they can take more action, honestly, in terms of something that needs to be done and reported and all of that. So I think from that perspective, definitely it, and I think like it is very, very important to have women in positions of power. Um, and I think generally also, I think having more women around on, in spaces where film work is being done.
Do you think that having more women is also helping in holding more men in power accountable for?
Accountable, yeah. So that I would say, speaking specifically, I think that's, we've not yet reached that point where there are so many women in power that they can hold these men accountable. Like I said, it's been quite a failure.
Or is that why you feel that the Me Too movement has not perhaps taken off?
I mean, it has not taken off in India, and it's very complicated, and it's not because it's a very, very patriarchal setup, and power equations are like that. I definitely think things have gotten better in the sense that I think like things are safer for women on a set now, because they're, but overall I feel like the fact that, honestly, none of these men have been held accountable. And so I think that it's we still haven't reached that place where there is that much like that women are calling the shots like that. And also it's a very entrenched kind of an industry. I mean, it's not easy to actually set these systems in place. I think in the West it's been, also because the Me Too movement was much more organized in the West. When they broke that story, everything had been researched and investigative journalists had worked on it. They already like, and I think the thing in India has been that a lot of things have been very anonymous. So it's very difficult to, so I think like it's also not been organized. And I think that has kind of added to, to it not working out. But more than anything else, I think our structures are just much more entrenched. Maybe that's really, that's really what it is. But having said that, I definitely think that just the fact that there is an awareness, if something happens, like I feel a young female lady on a set, if something happens to her, she will speak up, and I think that's a good sign. She will tell somebody. So I think from that perspective, I think things have, there is a little more sort of awareness. And if somebody says something, you can't ignore it, especially if you put it on email and all of that. So I think those things uh, are definitely better. But honestly, I think we have a very long way to go. It's not like that Me Too happened and suddenly everything has changed. I mean, they do these workshops and all at the beginning of, you know, um, uh, and Netflix and all, they do it. It's quite good. They start like they do this workshop at the beginning, which is to make everybody aware of what is it and all of that. But you have to see the crew. They're not interested in listening to what's being said. So it's like, it's like they're treating it like a joke. So I just feel it's and a lot depends on, I think, so that's why it a lot depends on who's the director and who's the producer, and what are the like what is they are setting the tone for how things are. So the moment you have female directors and producers and all around, it's that way much better, because of course, like, you will take it very seriously and all of that.
Right. So I think we have come to the end of this episode. And personally, for me, as with most other episodes, I think this episode also reiterates the fact that it's very political when a woman or a group of women or anybody belonging to a marginalized gender comes and just speaks about what they experience on a daily basis. We thank you, Alankrita. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast and having this conversation with us. It's been fun. We hope you had fun too.
I did. Thank you so much. And it's so amazing that a platform like yours exists, because I follow you guys and you do such beautiful pieces. And I think it's so important, uh, to have like people like you guys who are actually listening, talking, critiquing, thinking, asking questions, and enabling others to think. Please keep up the good work. It's fantastic what you guys do.
It's January and you've already made our year.
Yes, set the tone for our years.
I really mean it. I follow everything that you guys write. I follow all your posts, and you really are doing amazing work. And I think it's really, really important work. So I'm sure that sometimes it must be very hard and all of that, but it's so important that you're doing it. You have no idea.
Thank you, Alankrita. That's very, very kind. Like I said, made our year. But to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back with another new episode next Thursday. So we will virtually see you then. Thank you so much, as always.